Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy and U.S. President Donald Trump held a phone conversation in which the leaders discussed the Russia-Ukraine conflict. During the call, Zelenskyy stated that they discussed opportunities to achieve peace as well as the preparation of a document governing security and economic cooperation. Both the leaders also talked about U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's visit to Kyiv, which focused on a deal concerning Ukrainian critical minerals between the two countries. As per Zelenskyy, Trump also shared details of his conversation with Putin, and they agreed to maintain further contact and plan upcoming meetings. The call took place shortly after Trump announced he had spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin about starting negotiations immediately with Moscow to end the conflict in Ukraine. And for more, we have Anil Thomas joining us from the newsroom. Well, Anil, given the recent phone call between President Trump and President Putin, now how do you assess the likelihood of meaningful progress towards resolving the Ukraine conflict, especially in light of the significant thaw we see in US-Russia relations?
Well, good morning, Lipakshi. Well, a positive outlook, to a very long conflict that's on between Russia and Ukraine. It started on Feb 24, 2022. It's almost been 3 years. We are on the verge of celebrating or, looking at the third anniversary of this conflict between the two nations. Let's purely look at it in terms of numbers. There are close to 7 million people who have been displaced in Ukraine, close to 7 million people who have left Ukraine, close to 4.5 million who have been internally displaced inside Ukraine. And that's not all. We are looking at almost 1/3 of Ukraine getting affected with this conflict. That's almost on the verge of entering into its third year. So this particular move, where President Trump has had a long 90-minute conversation with Putin, is clearly indicative, and then the follow-up call with Zelenskyy is clearly indicative of a new rise in Russia-US relations. Not only that, it's also getting Ukraine on board. But the territorial concessions along with the NATO membership out of the radar, does not leave much for Ukraine to choose in this particular deal that's on the table. I think we'll have to wait and watch for the Munich conference that follows, followed by the meeting between Putin and Trump that takes place in Saudi Arabia, as Trump indicated, to get the finer points of this. But a thaw in the relationship is something that's good, because the world was, worried with this delayed or prolonged conflict between the two nations, which is having a cascading effect on the global supply chains. Those things could look for a big relief. And I think this particular, coming back to the table to talks is something good for the world, because the world was hoping that this particular conflict, would finally reach some kind of conclusion, especially when it comes to getting the two parties on board.
All right. Also, Anil, with President Trump planning a meeting with Putin in Saudi Arabia and discussing the situation with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy also, what impact do you foresee this diplomatic shift having on US-Ukraine relations, especially, and the broader geopolitical landscape there?
Well, on a broader geopolitical landscape, it leaves the European Union in a state of, confusion, because the European Union is not going to be party to these talks. For that matter, even Ukraine has time and again said that they had to be party to the talks. But if you see, the call is first made to Putin and then to Zelenskyy as a follow-up. So clearly, even Ukraine is not on the table when it comes to the two world leaders talking, especially Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. So in that context, it becomes, and also the point of contention could be, first of all, the decrease of military force inside Ukraine that Russia has been, time and again raising. Losing the NATO membership is another thing that, Ukraine has been trying for long. It started in 2000. They formally made a request in 2022. But now with this almost likely out of the window, or a prolonged extension to getting membership into NATO, clearly leaves Ukraine with not much to choose. Ukraine has lost enough. Ukraine cannot afford this, and I think Russia is not going to give an inch. So if there is a barter that's been tried out, you take this, I take that, almost 20% of Ukrainian entire region is with the Russians, after this particular prolonged war that we have seen. So it does not leave Ukraine with much. But yes, in the geopolitical situation, if US is only going to provide aid, US is not going to provide armed soldiers to fight this particular conflict, I think it puts more pressure on the European Union and I think European Union does not look ready for that. They are also ready to provide arms and ammunition, but not in terms of getting their soldiers on the ground. So that leaves Ukraine with not much to choose. Rather gather whatever is available on the table, make a deal, and look for an end to the conflict, so that at least they can look forward to some elections there at the end of the year and maybe getting their house in order, because this prolonged fight has left with Ukraine with nothing to gain, more to lose.
All right, Anil, thank you so much for all those insights from there.